our intros.
Yes. Hello, hello, welcome. My name is Kylee Jones. I identify with she, her pronouns. I am the clinical director here at the Indigenous Circle of Wellness. I also wear many hats outside of my professional identity, in that I am a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, community member. And today I am joining from the ancestral lands of the Gabrielino and Cahuilla people here in what we call Riverside County in the Inland Empire.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. My name is Monique Castro. I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation and Chicana, born and raised on Tongva lands here in Los Angeles. I currently still reside in Los Angeles. I think I'll always be in Los Angeles. It's home for me as far as where I was born and raised. But my family is from the Navajo Nation. And so, for folks who are familiar with the Navajo Nation, pretty much in the Fort Defiance, St. Benito area, right near Window Rock, Arizona is where my family is. And I also have family in El Paso, Texas as well. But we are the LA family. I have a lot of cousins and sisters in LA. And let me see what else. So I'm the founder and CEO of Indigenous Circle of Wellness. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a certified professional coach. I have a lot of different hats, and I think the one that I'm having the most exciting time with is being a mom. I'm a mom of a 3-year-old toddler. And so that's been fun. I'm also an auntie and yeah, just a community member as well. So for folks, if this is the first time coming to one of our coffee breaks, it's super chill, conversational, an opportunity to connect, to learn together, to ask questions, to be in conversation, and of course, to bring your coffee if you are a coffee drinker, maybe you're a tea drinker. I'm a coffee drinker. I've been drinking coffee with my grandma since I was about 8 years old, so it's a whole thing. Um, it was a way that we would connect. So it is fitting that we call it the coffee break, even for LA time at 2 in the afternoon. It is still very much something that I enjoy in the afternoon. So welcome. And again, we have the link, and I'll make sure I'll share it one more time here. So if you have any questions, you can place them in by filling out the form. You're also welcome to use the chat and also go off mute and engage in a conversation or ask a question. This is what it's all about. So welcome. So Kylie, let's jump into it. Um, did you want to kind of kick us off with
Um,
conversation?
so just thinking about our topic today, like returning to Indigenous ways of healing. Um, I think it's fitting that you and I are kind of like having a conversation about this. And even to just like seeing what that means, where we're also to like setting with that where that defines for us. And so I guess in sharing a little bit more of like my background and my connection to you, Monique, I would just start out and kind of saying like I always knew I was going to be a healer in some way. When I was younger, I thought this would be as a pediatrician, until I witnessed my brother's friend get hurt as a child. And I was like, well, I can't handle that. Like, I can't do it. So I was like, okay, well, what else? What's next? What other options do I have? And I realized that I was a great listener and that people would kind of come to me. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I could be like a counselor, therapist. But I also didn't know how that worked or how that happened. Fast forward several years. I had my bachelor's and I met Monique actually through the Tribal TANF program. And at this time, I didn't know she was also pursuing like a career in education and therapy either, but I was just like, oh, cool peeps, we're kind of in the same place and like that was that. Fast forward a few more years and I see she had left TANF. I had worked at a different office at that point. Um, and she had opened her own private practice. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And I know her. And like, this is so cool. But I was like, I'm not there yet because I didn't have what I needed for licensure. So I kind of just like waited and like watched from the sidelines and supported along the way. And then she was like, "Oh, we're hiring." And I was like, "Okay, but I'm not ready yet." And my partner was like, "No, you email her right now." And like stood next to me till I did it. And she was like, "Yes, totally. Come on, let's go. Like you're coming along." But in a lot of the ways of my life, I didn't have words for what I was doing or what I felt called to do. I kind of just did it. I seen this through examples with my dad, with my great grandparents. My grandparents, they kind of just did, and it wasn't really like talked about or shared where this was rooted at, where this came from. So then coming to the Indigenous Circle of Wellness and like even our logo and understanding, right? Like this indigenous approach, I was like, that's cool, but like what does that mean? What does that look like? Um, and so I was like, what are the words to this? And that's where I realized like, okay, there's a whole person. And within that whole person, there are pieces, there are sections, there are things, right? But we can't just look at one of those because this is a whole person. And I was like, yes, very much, right? And so even you look at our logo, there's the circle, the four quadrants, right? And so then it's like, oh, now there's language to this. Four quadrants, holistic, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, right? Even childhood, adolescence, adulthood, elder stages, right? Like all of this starting to come together. It's like, oh, this makes sense. And
Mhm.
so to me, this is like, okay, this is where language comes in to a return. But I'm also interested as like Monique, right? Like you created this, you came up with this. Like, what I guess was your understanding of language and bringing that in, that has then led to so many others finding language for themselves.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Thank you for sharing just your connection, our connection that we've had that has transcended over time, right? Like it's just like we have been in each other's like ecosystem in different capacities for a long time. And I think that also speaks to the relationships and how that being like such an indigenous core value, right? So we think about indigenous core values of like relationships, reciprocity, redistribution, respect, and I'm missing one, Kylee. I'm like relationship, respect, redistribution. Oh,
Reciprocity.
reciprocity. Okay. So when I think of that, like that's exactly what and again language. So I didn't really have those like actual terms until I was like in an Indigenous ambassadors program now about 13, 14 years ago. So, but that was being in space with other Indigenous folks from around the globe through this ambassadors program. And in that, they gave us this language, something that had always been very much in alignment with how I was raised with my grandparents, but I didn't have the language for like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? So I think one of it is like very much relationships and then how do we continue to be in relationship with one another and support one another? And how are we bringing folks up in and into support, right? So a little background about me for folks who might not know. I am first generation all the things, first generation high school student, college graduate, grad school graduate, business owner, and so forth. But one thing that has always been true is that I didn't quite fit in the boxes. Like quite literally, even checking off boxes growing up was hard for me because I was like, it's so much more complex than this. It's so much, there's so much more to me than checking off these things. And um, been my experience, and also like we can do better. It's always like we can do better. So paying attention to how I experience the world, the services that I received, whether that be through education, becoming a therapist and so forth. Like I'm like, I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to do it in this like Western colonial framework. And at that time, I didn't have that language either. I just knew I didn't like how it was done and I didn't want to do it that way. Um, and yet I still had to go through these like systems, right? And so I'll speak specifically about becoming a therapist because even in my grad school program, it's very westernized. The modalities that we were introduced were definitely not indigenous like modalities, but I remember thinking to myself, well, if I'm going to be learning these like Western approaches to therapy, then I'm going to at least find one that feels most in alignment with like indigenous values. And what that was for me at the time was relational Gestalt therapy. So when I learned that modality, it's like, okay, they talk about relationships, they talk about, um, the like more of a holistic approach to services. There's some things that are kind of questionable, but again, none of them are perfect. But I was like, this one feels most in alignment. So I remember asking my the clinical like director of my grad program, where do I get trained in that? And I was literally the only one in my entire program at that time that had ever asked to be trained in that particular modality. And she said, well, there's this place called the Relational Center. So I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the Relational Center. They're like on the west side of LA. And she was like, that's where they actually practice this modality. So, of course, I applied to do my clinical practicum there. And when now they were so in alignment, like they're all about interdependence, they're all about like relationships and community. I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, amazing. And guess what, y'all? They are not Native folks. They were not even folks of color, predominantly like white community folks, but they like these folks got it. Like they were like on the right track. And I felt like very much at home with like how they approached it. And their director, well, their executive director at the time, and I'd say like one of my mentors and supervisors, Mark Fairfield, was such a huge influence on that. Again, a white man, but he got it and he understood interdependence and understood relationships and reciprocity and really went outside of the confines of what therapy looks like. So much so of how even the space was set up, where it wasn't like this clinic. It was like this communal space. And I was like, what? We can do this? Like, we can actually do this? And so, again, in my mind, therapy was going to be like in one little tiny room. You're going to enter like a clinic or office to press a little buzzer to get called on and go to your session. Because that was even my experience of seeking a therapist. And I was like, I guess that's just how it is. But when I seen that this was possible, and I actually got to work in a space and learn in this way, even though it wasn't by Native folks, I was just like, or Indigenous folks, or even folks of color, I was like, but they get it. So it really helped me see what was possible. And then I was like, I remember talking to Mark and saying, this is how it is, like this is indigenous like knowledge, like systems, like just the way that you all are structuring it, like this is really is in alignment with me. And I remember him doing all these trainings for all the different clinicians, and it was really hard for them to like reframe their thinking around this approach to therapy. And it wasn't like an indigenous approach to therapy. What it was more of a relational approach to therapy, which is pretty much very much aligned with indigenous values, right? So I was like, kind of like, I already know this though. And he's like, of course you do. Like, this is who you are. This is your community. Like, this is very much part of who you are already. So, with all that to be said, is that I was fortunate enough to be in that space. Additionally, I also worked in a Native organization prior to this, right? I was working with Kylee. I worked in a Native organization where I seen also what's possible there and working in an organization. Now there's some really beautiful things that I witnessed there, and there were also some very traumatic things that I witnessed there because they also function within a Western system. So it was always, I felt that there was a lot of conflict with how services were being provided or how we showed up as folks in this work, and then like it kind of contradicted each other because the TANF program is federally funded, which also means that it's going to be you're being held to the grants and the standards of the federal government, right? But the cool thing about it was that it also was ran by a tribe, which was really interesting and unique. So there was some like cultural things that were also practiced in how we even like how work was set up, how like what was kind of our norm working within a native organization. With all that to be said, or having worked in these different spaces and also worked in another nonprofit organization that was native, it was a native organization. I really noticed like what really felt in alignment for me, where I felt the safest and most supported, and what I wanted to then bring into what would be my future, right? And at that time, it was never, I hadn't thought about having my own private practice per se. It was more of like, I just want to work in a place where like my values are honored. I can feel like I'm in alignment. I can practice or be of support in a good way. I want to work in my community. So I had like kind of these ideas of what I wanted to have. And so lo and behold, when I was out searching for work and to get all this that I really wanted and dreamed of, I was met with, oh, that didn't exist. That didn't exist. I had little pieces here and there, but it didn't quite exist in the way that I wanted it or needed it to be. But I also knew I wasn't the only one. So to Kylie's point, like she also was searching for something. And I'm sure many of us have been searching for that. And so for me at that time, it was like, well, I really searched high and low, didn't find it. So I was like, well, I guess I gotta create it. I gotta create it and then be that in the for the, for myself and for others. And so so yeah, so now we're celebrating 8 years of being in business, and like Kylie's been with us for like the last 5 years. We have other practitioners that have been with us. And I would say if you were to probably do a little mini interview of all of us, there's going to be some things around like we get to be fully who we are, and that's what has really drawn us all to the practice and how we support folks versus just a part of who we are. Because I also worked in a setting where it was like, you're a therapist, be a therapist. They didn't see me fully as like someone who's also creative and also likes to do like teach and to like facilitate and do all these other things. And I was like, I can't work here. All they want me to do is be just to provide therapy, not to mention in a Western like construct. So I was like, yeah, that's not gonna work out. So I'll like I'll stop there because I can go on and on. But the main thing is that I get this question a lot of like, when we think of what we're looking for and needing, sometimes it really is, well, one, like now we do have somewhere to go. So if anyone's looking for a place to work that does this, we are here. But also I see more of it happening because like once we start to see someone open a door and do it, they're like, we see what's possible. And then we're like, we can do that too, right? Because we can. Like I think there's always been a thing around the Western therapy and healing is like it's so confined for one, and then they get scare the shit out of us about what we're able to do or not do, like what's legal or ethical, And I'm like, well, a lot of stuff like and we always practice within legal like parameters for sure, but also ethical to who, right? Like who is it, does it make sense for a particular community or not? So I would say from the larger community perspective of like therapists, we probably are, I don't know, some folks might like have be really uncomfortable. We don't do anything illegal, but we could do things that are uncomfortable because of the way that we kind of function like if we were in a very small town. So we're going to run into our clients, we're going to see them, they're going to be in relationship with us beyond the therapy room. There's a lot of different things that I would say just are expected when we're working within our communities in this way. So I'll kind of just pause there, and I also see that there's some comments in the chat, so I'll check into that. But Kylie, just anything that's coming up for you, and I don't even know if I answered your question, but I hope that it helps. It provided some support there.
Yes, yes, no, it did. And as I tell my clients too, I was like, there's no one way to answer a question. The more you share or the way you take it, like that's what was meant to be shared and that's what was meant to be heard. We go from there, right? And I think even in this point of one of the things that really stood out for me was how you were like, but wait, I'm already doing that. And your instructor was like, well, yeah, that's who you are. That was like kind of really affirming because you also said that to me in those senses of like, well, what about this or what about that? Like, no, do what you need to do. Do what is like intuitive to you because you already know what you're supposed to do. And as you said, right, like some of these Western approaches, that would never be the advice I would have gotten. That has also shaped me so much in how I show up for my clients, how I show up for our team, even how I show up for my own kids, right? And those 5 R's that you listed out earlier too, relationship, responsibility, reciprocity, redistribution, and respect, right? These were some of the first words that I was able to attribute to how I lived my life through like a training with you. And now as I like interact with my kids, I'm like, yeah, they're all under 10, right? So they're littles, but they're not like not people. Like just because they're little doesn't mean I necessarily have to treat them different. They have their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own, lives as well. And so treating them with this sense of respect isn't necessarily something that only comes, oh, you're an adult now. Okay, I can respect you, or like I can interact with you this way. And so these points of even just like what you have started with ICO and like shared out in my life specifically, right, has like even gone into my family. And again, it's this point of like, I am super thankful to be here. And like, not only did it just give me language then when I started, but it like is affirmation every day. Um, so I just wanted to share that back with you. I felt like that was coming up and on my heart. And so, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. Oh, I'm like, so this is how we function, y'all, by the way, in our work environment. So you kind of see it live. We just had a meeting on Monday, and it was just really beautiful to be able to like be vulnerable, to share back, to support one another. And I think that has a lot to do with how we co-create space. So when we think of like an indigenous approach, even to how a space is held, like I think I want to touch on that a bit around like being a practice owner. Yeah, the title CEO, but like we really function in the inside, like we're very collaborative. So we have our titles for, for different reasons. One, because it well, one, we have to have it for the IRS and the state secretary of state, around like decision making, where so forth, and also to help us stay in alignment with where our strengths are and what we're bringing to the team. So like when we were, so Kylie really, she's a clinical director, right? So she supports the clinical team. She does all the check-ins with them and support and everything, but like there's so much stuff that we do collaboratively. So what that looks like in practice is like we're building out a program right now, and we're doing it together. Like I will take on a piece of it, like I'm doing more of the strategy part of it, and then Kylie being in the clinical side, she's looking at it from, okay, how does this going to be applied as like the clinical team? What makes sense? She's going to provide feedback, insight, get feedback from the team there. And then we have our operations director who then is like, okay, she's a systems person. How do we put this into practice while staying in alignment? Obviously, always with our values. And so when we're thinking about how things are rolled out, it's very much about how we're doing this together and taking into account all of our ways of like how we're working together throughout, like truly. And then our director of operations just logged in, our executive director of operations. Hey, Bridget. Um, so I was just sharing how we're working on like a program and how we kind of work in within our team. So what you'll notice is just how we do the work differently. So it really goes from the inside out and vice versa. And so we let folks know that too when you join our team, like expect to be included in a lot of things because we want we want that feedback. We want folks to be a part of different pieces of how things are getting built out. So that's an indigenous approach. It's communal. It's relational, it's taking into account the whole community within and externally. The other thing I would say as a therapist, and what that looked like in practice or has looked like in practice and how it translates to how we provide services is that um, our intakes are not, or they're not a million questions. There's some questions because we need some initial information, but it's really about building up that relationship early on. So I would say a therapy session with me would look like getting to know you, some learning about, you know, where, well, I would introduce myself fully the way, same way I introduce myself to you all is the way I would introduce myself to a new client. Sharing who I am, where I come from, where's my community, where I grew up, where I was raised. All of this matters. And so I share all that. And then they're more open to share with me. And we don't accept insurances for the most part, and that's by design. And that allows us to really get to know our clients and not be a diagnostic first kind of practice. So although we are trained to diagnose, we can diagnose, it is not the first line of in ways in which we support someone. We really get to know someone. And then at some point, if we see that a diagnosis is present, if that's going to be an area that they need more support on, we're going to create a treatment plan accordingly. However, it's not what we lean with first. So what a new client would not necessarily feel is like a million questions, just kind of being all up in their business, and feeling really uncomfortable, right? And being very vulnerable without getting to know someone. So we build that relationship first, and then along the lines, we'll ask some of those questions where we feel like the timing is right. The other is that we do come from a perspective of holistic, so really taking into account the person mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and literally doing activities with them to get that information. And so we use the medicine wheel as an assessment tool and also a treatment planning tool to support folks on their wellness journey. And so that might come up in like session 3, maybe session 6. It kind of just depends. And we'll introduce the medicine wheel to them and kind of get a sense of where are the areas that they want to work on. And so it's not just about focusing on the mental health, it's focusing on all the areas of the quadrants. Now, as a provider, I don't necessarily, I'm gonna, meet all those areas of the quadrants, but in the therapy sense, we're going to also inquire like, okay, if we're working on our spiritual wellness, like what does that look like? What connections would you have? Who do you need to be connected with? So we'll bring that in as part of the treatment and the ways in which we're supporting. Um, so I think that's one way. Another way for me, when we were doing more in-person services, it was even just how the space was set up. It's having baskets, it's having medicine in the space, it's inviting folks to bring medicine that they might use, whether that be sage, cedar, sweetgrass, if that's something that they do use and practice with. What we don't do is that I wouldn't just start smudging someone. I would ask and learn more about like what are their practices, and if it was a practice that they utilize, maybe invite that into the space. Or if I felt like it could be really supportive, I might ask permission if they would be okay with me burning some medicine for them. And again, if they felt in agreement with that. I also have different healing stones and also invite folks. So everyone that comes to see us has different um, resources and support that they already have access to. So we very much invite that into the physical space or into the virtual space as a way to honor their process of healing and wellness. So those are a few examples of how it shows up in the therapy side or in the clinical side of things for me. And I'm curious, Kylie, like what has that looked like for you?
Yeah, the in person definitely you can feel the difference. And so the intentionality we put behind how we decorate, how we set up our office spaces, it's really there. No, at the beginning of working with ICO, we were only in Commerce. And as I said, I'm in Riverside County. I drove to Commerce and liked going into the office because it felt good, because it was such a healing and open space. And I had clients too at times during the pandemic where it's like, okay, well, we're gonna mask up and we have our precautions, we have the different things we have set in place, yeah, you can come into the office and let's see how this works, right? And now having more offices spread out through LA County and Riverside, um, each of those offices is very intentional how we set it up. And so I still have in-person clients now who come and see me in my Riverside office. And that point of, yeah, bringing into like essential oils, having diffusers in the space, even asking them different preferences they may have. We have different light settings and everything as well. So it's not like the harsh white lights and maybe some of the softer yellow lights or even to lower lightings, things like this, and utilizing those. Also, too, when I meet with clients, it's very much a relational base, so it's very conversational. Um, I kind of switch but on and off between like how I take notes. Sometimes I'll write things down, sometimes I won't. I'll be present, be here, right? And one of the words I learned in like the brain spotting training that I've really kind of connected to is just the attunement, who are emotionally attuning to each other, being there, being present. You can feel the presence. And so, like, I'm focused in, I'm present, I'm here, right? That's a big focus as well. So there's no other really distractions that are there in this space. Very relational in that sense too, of it's just a conversation. Let's just talk. Like, why are we here today? What's going on? Um, Also do introduction. So it's like, tell me how much you want to, tell me what you feel comfortable with. Ask me about myself if you also feel comfortable in that way. Um, some of the modalities that I utilize are EMDR and brain spotting. And what I also like about those is it does go back to ancestral knowings of how we have balance, bilateral stimulation, left, right on both sides. But I also like the point that with each of those and specifically brain spotting, you don't have to really tell me anything. I just have to be there with you. And so that also can meet clients at their level of comfort. I don't want to have to retell the story. You're my third therapist and I've already told it twice, or okay, you don't have to. Let's get into it though. Let's see where does it take us, right? Also with that is just like knowing I'm a verbal processor. I want to talk it all out. Cool, let me have it. I'm here, right? Either way, these can work. And so it's really adaptable. And I get to meet my client where they're at. So I do take on that approach as well of like the client is the expert on themselves. I'm not. I'm here to support them. And maybe have some options for guidance, but it's also to their expertise and their comfort, their level of knowing that really leads the work.
Yeah, I love that. The attunement, the like having autonomy in the space. So what we've found is a lot of folks who have chosen to work with us, and we've worked with hundreds upon hundreds of folks throughout the years. Maybe we should get like a full number at some point, but I just know we work with a lot of people throughout every year and in different capacities. And with that, one thing, what we get quite often is folks saying, I've never did therapy because I didn't trust anyone else. Like there was a level just by how we show up in the community and how we provide services that there's been a desire to work with us. Because I've also had folks in sessions say, if I would share this with someone else, I think my therapist might think might put me in a psych ward for this. They might think I'm having psychosis. They might, like there's a lot of fear around what can happen within certain systems. And that's not something that, well, one, again, we're not going to just go straight into like, oh, you're having these thoughts, you're hallucinating, you're in psychosis. No, it's like we really learn like where is that coming from? Because sure, sometimes it could be that, but many other times it's literally like the understanding that we do have folks have a really deep connection to creator. They have a deep connection to the spiritual realm, and that supporting someone um and really understanding where they're coming from and not like diagnosing that is can really be life changing for them. So we've we work with folks with different also gifts that they might have, different abilities that they might have, and it's not odd for us. And it's actually really encouraged because as folks work with us and maybe they've had a relative or a friend or someone who's already worked with us, they're like they know there's safety and like things that they could share with us that they might not feel safe to share in a different type of setting. So because we come from the framework that we do and that the way in which we support folks in the way we do services. The other thing that I would say like that is kind of well, it's always been our way, but I think we're really leaning further into is like therapy is definitely one approach to wellness and support. It can be, it doesn't have to be the only one. So we've been coming in more from like a multidisciplinary approach as providers. So we have providers who are also energy healers. We have providers who also do tarot reading. We have providers who also, like myself, do coaching. So just kind of allowing different modalities and the client to decide what modality or a combination of modalities would be best for them from within our own practice, and then referring out if they want other referrals. So we're connected to a lot of folks who do so much different type of healing work, whether that be you know there's like a list of all the different there's so many different ways of healing and wellness, and we really support all of it. And if we don't have the connection, we usually know someone that might, so we make those connections. So that's again where the relationships are really essential, and that we're able to support folks. I'm also noticing the time already. Man, time goes by so fast. But I want to answer this question that's in the chat, which is, are we able to work in other states? We do work in other states. Our therapy services, so the psychotherapy line of services at this time is only in California because of our license and because California hasn't quite got to the compact just yet. I know it's in the works and that should hopefully be changing soon. But our other services that we have are wellness services such as wellness coaching, energy healing, our spaces like this that we offer, a number of things. Those are offered. We do it nationally. Um, and we'll work with folks out of the state as well. We do workshops and trainings as well. So that can all be done beyond California, but for psychotherapy, currently it's only in the state of California until we get either have the ability to practice in other states or get licensed in other states. And yes, we do plan to bring on more providers, remote providers as well, beyond just therapy, since we are moving more into a multidisciplinary overall approach to wellness and having that all housed internally, especially in this upcoming year in 2026. Um, I I'm gonna pause there. There's a question actually from the submission, Kylie, that I'll get to. But I wanted to see if you have anything you wanted to add or share, and then also encourage anyone to ask any questions as well.
No other additions for me yet, but just wondering if there was like, yeah, any other questions. I saw a lot of people like relating or resonating in the chat too. So I love the engagement. As I say, every time I do speaking, I like to talk with you, not at you. So definitely feel free to come off mute if you have any other questions. If there's anything else too that like wanting to maybe get clarification on, yeah, we'd love to have it.
Yeah. One of the questions that came up in the submissions was around working within community, particularly within tribal communities where you might feel like rejected from your community. So maybe your tribe isn't as accepting, or you don't feel like you have a place within your community to work in, but you have a strong desire to work in your community. Uh, I will say, and then in this reflection, the person also kind of shared is like there's a lot of other folks who are working within their tribe or their community, and having these amazing, thriving lives. And here they are who have multiple degrees, multiple, you know, expertise that they can offer, and they're just not getting like picked up and or like being hired on by the tribe. And there was also reflection around like, could this also be part of like generational trauma? And I say, yes, absolutely. Sometimes we will see some of our hardest and most challenging places to work in within our own communities for a variety of reasons, one of them being trauma, historical trauma, lateral violence that also occurs and exists, and how even as Native and Indigenous people or any folks of color, we might really put on a pedestal like our white counterparts as knowing better and doing better than us, which is not necessarily true, but we've been so, and it's been so much fed to us that we even might believe it. So we'll see this in certain organizations and systems and within tribes, within employment opportunities where like the leader is not what the community is representative of, right? So with that, I would say one is like find your community. Like, yes, I mean, if I like my community is my tribe, but find your community and then like where do you feel like most in alignment with? I shared with you early on my first introduction into therapy that was not from this colonial kind of like construct was actually in the Relational Center, which was not a Native organization. It was a white or is an organization led by mostly white folks. But they were also very aware of that and they named that and they knew that and they were like really working towards that. So I seen alignment there. I went into that space and I'm so glad that I did. So sometimes the alignment is not gonna be in the places that you actually think it's gonna be in. It's gonna be somewhere else. Ask questions, see where it fits for you. I think I needed to have that experience to then bring that all of that back, all those experiences back to my community and do it differently, right? So whoever this person is, whether you're on the call or you submitted it and you didn't join us live, is that I would say try not to focus too much on fitting into the box that you're like, if you're like, I'm a circle and this is a square, go find the circle, right? And it might not be where you think where it needs to be. You might be spending way too much energy and time there and like find something else. And or create what you need. There are so many of us now doing this work in different like ways. Like maybe it's just like you need to create something else that would be more in alignment. So sometimes we could spend a lot of time trying to feel accepted or be accepted, and that might not be the best use of our time. And it might be that later on in the future you'll come back and be able to really offer your community something really amazing that they might not be ready for yet, right? So um I hope that's helpful for anyone who might be considering or thinking about where you're like, I don't fit in this space, or like I keep trying and no one wants to change anything. I worked in an organization who did not want to do any type of change at all. And I could have just spent the next 15 years of my life trying to keep on like pushing up against the grain, or I could use all that energy and create something else that has honestly been even more than I can even imagine, right? So take that and however that might show up for you. I also understand that sometimes it is um, really difficult because like even when I was in grad school, I had limitations of where I can do things. So I'm like, okay, well, let me just finish. Let me finish this degree. Let me finish these hours, and then I know I'll have more autonomy and be able to do things differently. So sometimes we just have to kind of go with it for a little bit, knowing that there's something better on the other side of it. Um, so there's that. Anything else that came up while I was talking?
Yes, there was another question in the chat
Yes.
about
I have a
accepting.
little sniffle, sorry.
Good. About accepting MFT practicum students. I did respond that unfortunately at this time we're not able to accept interns or practicum students, though we will likely in the new calendar year be hiring different levels. So that includes associate levels, license level mental health providers.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so and maybe in the future practicum students, that would be really awesome to be able to support. It's just, little by little. as our team has more capacity and we grow, we will definitely we really enjoy working with folks in all areas of their growth and development. Um, I had a question about the tarot readings and it being the first time having heard of this and how's it like how can it be interested in being and learning more about it. So I'm not the one who actually provides the tarot in serve in sessions. It's Jen. Jen is one of our licensed marriage and family therapists. She used tarot in various ways. She actually did a group, kind of like a group reading space, a group intentional space that we had about a few weeks ago during the new moon. It was so amazing and beautiful. And so in that, what I could speak to that is that, and she shares more about this and how she practices. She uses it as a tool to support like guidance. So with that, it could be pulling a card. So she'll shuffle the deck and she'll pull a card and then um she'll pull a card based off of what her client had said, like when to stop, right? And then she'll use that as a reflection tool, as a supportive resource. So she can elaborate more on that. She is going to be doing more of the tarot reading sessions soon. So if anyone's interested in that in practice or even have that as an offering for yourself that you'd be interested in, it is something that can be done like on a one-time basis just for the tarot reading and how to use that as a resource to support your wellness and like healing journey, or even goal setting and intention. So we did the tarot readings for the new moon. It was for intention setting for the season, for this moon cycle. And so it was really supportive and felt super in alignment with where I'm at. And like I also got some, she shared some information about how it could be useful and supportive. So she's the one who does that. So um I don't want to speak too much on it because I like that's her thing, but that's definitely a resource that she brings in.
I had a question that was more in line with your previous topic. So, and it's a kind of a sense of one, so if you don't answer it, no problem. But do you get any negative feedback of like what we're trying to do when it comes to the mental health industry being too pan-indigenous, being like too generic? Because that's kind of a struggle for me where I deal with that pushback from my own community members thinking that it's like way too pan-indigenous. And because sometimes it is because of the system we're in. Sometimes it is. I'm mixed heritage, so that also like sets me up for failure, right? That sets me up for scrutiny and critique. But like I am combining both the Roma and native stuff. I am kind of being a bit pan-indigenous because I kind of have to be, if that makes sense. And I don't really know a good defense to that, I guess, if I even should be defensive to it.
The scrutiny part, I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure I know it's out there, right? We haven't at least not got too much of that to our face. I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's people out there who like question, like, what are they doing? Um, this is how I feel about it though. And I maybe this will be supportive. It's like we show up authentically. We also communicate what we do transparently. We let people understand like how we do things and what we don't do. So there's assumptions. We've had assumptions of like what we do or don't do. And so we just have to be clear about it and also what we like and and so with that I think it's been very well received. And so the folks who are in alignment with how we practice find us and we are very supportive to them. But we're not for everyone, right? Like we're not for everyone, and that's okay. So one thing I would say is that don't try to fit what everyone needs. Stay in alignment with what feels right for you and just double down on that. And the right folks that are meant to work with you and where they're going to find super amazing healing with you and support need that. So we're not gonna that we've gotten questions like, do you do this and that? And usually it's like I even had a client once who was like, well, aren't you gonna like smudge me now? And I was like, no, that's not what I do. You know? But what I can do is learn more about what is your medicine and how we can bring that into the space, right? Now,
That's so funny because I wish I would have found you a year ago because that is exactly the strategy I've been taking and it's been working so well this year. Is just being very clear what I do and what I don't do.
yes, yes. So being clear, so your messaging is important. It's saying it up front in initial intake. What can they expect of working with you? Is this in alignment with you? Um, this is how I show up in community. So even with folks who work with me, I share with them like I am very much involved in the community. You will most likely see me somewhere, somehow, and I share with them the way I greet folks is always with a hello and usually a hug. So you can expect that whether you're my client, my colleague, a distant friend, like that is how. So I let's let them know if I see you, are you comfortable with that? Because that is like if I didn't say hi to you or I didn't hug you, it'd kind of be a little odd, like I just skipped over you, you know? When I'm most of the time I'm like, hey, like that's just who I am. So I'm gonna stay that way regardless. That's me as a person. And so they're like, yeah, for sure. So I see clients all the time in community. No one knows unless they tell each other, which one time that happened, there was like three folks who were like, she's my therapist. Oh, wait, she's my therapist. Oh, she's my therapist. Like, well, you all shared it yourselves. So, hey. But it was actually really cool that that happened. But I didn't, address it that. I just said hi to everybody. And they just all happened to be folks that I worked with and they knew each other. But they didn't know that about each other other than that experience. And it didn't change anything. It's just like, oh, it was kind of cool that we all have the same therapist. Um, so stay in alignment and just be clear so folks know what to expect and what not to expect with you is going to be huge. Um, and and it's okay if we're not for everyone. We're just not. But we are for who we need to be there for. And they will find us and we will be really supportive to them. Um, And yes, I also seen a comment too around like there's a lot of different practices from around the globe from in our indigenous communities from around the globe that have been seen as maybe like black magic for some folks. It might be like underground things. Part of re-indigenizing is that we bring them out and we really share the story of what they are and what they can do and be supportive in our healing. Um, because otherwise it's it's not gonna we need to make sure that we're uplifting it, right, and not shying away from it. But I also recognize that not everything is for everyone either, so or not for everyone to have to know and understand. So you get to choose. I think that's the other beautiful thing. You get to choose.
Yeah, the practice of tarot has been beautiful. Oh, well, obviously the Maroma community globally is divided on this. Half of them hate that it's become common in psychotherapy, and the other half love it. I'm on the side that I love seeing that being used because that's how my grandmother, it's how my great grandmother, that's whenever someone came to them with essentially they were counselors without the title of counselors. The first thing we do, make a cup of tea or coffee, get the tarot deck out. Like that's the first thing they would do to start talking that and having that therapeutic relationship. So I'm very excited to see more of that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's there's a lot of reintegration of things and for various communities and where that comes from for them, right? So I personally only practice things that I'm most comfortable with or already have learned or part of my community, but I always invite folks to bring things in to the space that are going to be supportive for them, and that's really important so that folks feel and know that their cultures are uplifted and their healing practices are honored. And I get to learn from them and they share with me and they also feel, really great because they're able to bring that into the space. Um, I know we have only 4 more minutes, so Kylie, is there anything else you wanted to share?
Um, I think even just the feedback of like the representation piece, that's something we haven't really touched on. Uh, but it is one that I've gotten a lot back as well. So identifying myself as a multiracial, um, I have many clients who look like me or who also identify the same way, and they're like, to see a therapist that looks like me. or to be able to sit in therapy with someone who understands and I don't have to explain myself to then process is amazing, right? And so I know part of your story, Monique, was also creating this space because of it being a need and having that representation. I think also that point of um, that's what we're also here for. And even just that, what you were kind of calling out right now is that point of like, we're reclaiming it and we're bringing it back because it wasn't started just as like this Western approach. Even as Mel had stated in those ways that like this is what our grandmothers did, this is what our ancestors did, in this way of sitting, talking, working through issues that come up. Like we coin that now kind of as therapy and we put these standards on it, but it is in our ancestry, in our lineage, and these ways of coming back to what it is really making space for who we are wholly, who we are in community, who we are as people, right? And like I think that kind of just bridges and brings it all back full circle in this way of like, okay, I see someone who looks like me or identifies in this way, or I can also relate to that. Because even like for myself, searching for a therapist was really hard. It's like, I don't want a male, I don't want
Mhm.
a white presenting woman, I don't want this or that, right? But then kind of finding other spaces too. I was like, okay, maybe that's not necessarily what I was looking for either. And landing on something that was again, where I didn't have all the language, really kind of made the difference.
Yeah, it does. And something that was also shared around the chat, what I think is so important is, and you shared also, Kylie, is like the transparency. Like, how do you identify? So I don't tell Kylie, this is how you need to identify. She identifies, and that's, you're going to see it on our website, you're going to see it on our Instagram, you're going to see it all the places, right? So even like on the and my at the bottom of my and actually all of our team, we highly encourage folks to share your identity. Like, what's your cultural background? Because as Native people, we do that. If you ever like are working within a Native organization, like we always have our tribe at the end of our name. That's not really typical of like other organizations, but we do that, and we see other folks doing more of that, and that's because I'm honoring my lineage, right? And sharing with folks like who I am, because it's important. It's like these, we see each other as relatives, right, or community, and so that offers support. So I say like, yeah, share who you are. Like, don't shy away from it. And I know we're already at 3 o'clock, but one last thing I will say is I remember someone telling me, well, if you do everything really indigenized or indigenous, like how about you're not going to get as many clients? I'm like, that's fine. I'm here for who I'm here for. And we have, just to say, we don't have a lack of like, um, we have a constant full caseloads, because we know who we're here to service and they're able to find us, and we honor who we are wholly all the time, right? So I'll end with that. Be authentic to yourself, share that on this authenticity to the world, and yeah, indigenize, because our community needs it. Indigenize everything. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Hi, Senya.
Hugs. Thank you for having me. I already fangirled on Monique when she totally didn't expect it. Um, so she's like, "Who are you? You're a little scary."
Never. I love it.
So thank you both. You have changed my life in the best of ways, and the fruit of the work that I got to do with Kylie continues to blossom. And I needed that reminder, Monique, of being my authentic self.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'll leave it at that. So thank you. It was very timely. So thank you. Thank you. Blessings to all. Thank you for holding space for us and daring to create what was needed for those of us who needed it.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Many blessings.
Blessings to your babies, Kylie.
Thank you. Blessings to you. I see your name. Yes.
Yes, we're doing things. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.